Hello, everybody. Welcome back to our Speedrack training for CET. Today, we are going to be talking about the wall drawing tab, and then we are going to get into the Speedrack extension itself. After we take a look at that, we are going to wrap up today with reusable files and favorites. I will let you know that there have been some updates in the Speedrack extension, and so we are going to go over those updates that just came out for 16.5. They are available in the Speedrack briefcase, so all of that communication is there for you. You have that list that you can reference back to as well, but we'll be going over that together. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and wait about one more minute before we jump into the wall drawing tab. I'm going to let everybody kind of get joined into the Zoom session here. So hold tight for about one more minute and then we will get going for the day. Okay. All right. So let's go ahead and start today with our wall drawing tab. Now we're going to keep the wall drawing tab section pretty simple today. I'm going to show you these tools and I'm going to show it with a CAD plan in my drawing as an example. But when we get to the exercise, I'm going to ask you to just create a space using the walls. If you have a CAD plan that you have handy that you would like to try out these tools with, by all means, go ahead and import that into your space and you can give it a shot. Working with it with the walls, adding walls on top of a CAD plan. But if you don't have a CAD plan, that is okay. I'm going to show you how these tools work on the CAD plan, but they also work just floating out in space as well. So you do not have to have a CAD plan to be able to use your walls. You can also just create the spaces that you need without having that as well. Okay, so when we go to our wall tab, it looks like a half sheetrock, half brick wall. We have a number of things that we can look at before we actually start to bring walls in. So the first thing that we're going to look at is the settings for our walls. And now we're going to access the wall settings by clicking on this top little rainbow bubble here, and this will be our wall scheme. Okay, so it's kind of a little bit tricky to see here. So up on the very top where it says walls, right here, this little rainbow bubble says wall scheme. When we click onto the wall scheme, we are going to be able to adjust what our walls will look like when we bring them in. Now, I'm going to clear this all out so we all kind of have the same kind of thing here. So we are all just kind of looking at the default. Now, what this allows you to do is to change your preferences for your walls. So every time that you bring a wall in, this is what it's going to look like. Now, if there are sizes of walls that you work with most often, this is a great place to go and update those preferences. So that way, as you're working in CET, you're having to do less individual adjustment after the fact. Now, if we know that we are typically designing for wall heights of, let's say, 40 feet, something like that, and maybe we've got 6-inch wall thicknesses, we'll just kind of make up some stuff here. We can set those preferences, and then when we bring walls in, they will automatically come in with these sizes and preferences applied. Now, we can also do things like adding wall base trim. and we can control what that's going to look like. So how high up do we want that to be? Maybe we want some rubber base trim or some diamond plating or something like that. We can do these different things here. And what you want to think about is what you're doing the vast majority of the time. So what is your typical design? What does that include and what does that look like? And I know every project's a little bit different, but this is going to get you to where you are most of the time. So that way you're having to do less individualized adjustment after you put the walls in your space. So we can change these options if we would like. You're also welcome to leave these all as the default and work with them individually as well. But this is a good way to speed yourself up a little bit. Now we do have different sections on the left. So right now we're dealing with our walls. We can also come down and start to work with our doors. You will see a preview window on the bottom left. And so if I zoom in on this door, I can see what my doors are going to look like here. Maybe that looks more like a office space door. Maybe we wanted to have solid doors. Okay, you can also adjust what type of handle you want, what type of hardware you want. And again, this is going to be able to be adjusted on an individual basis, but whatever we set for these preferences is what it's going to be as we bring these things into CET. So save ourselves some time. We can also control our overhead doors. So we can set up preferences for those overhead doors. Do we want to automatically add a shelter to our overhead doors when we bring them in? We can set that preference here. So however you typically work, you can go ahead and set these preferences. I'm going to have you explore these on your own as you are getting familiar with CET and kind of understanding what you work with typically. Everybody's a little bit different, so you might be somebody who design spaces that have more windows more frequently, or maybe you work with specific types of places. Now, the beautiful thing about this is that not only can you set your defaults here to match whatever you typically work with, you can also create additional schemes. So if you have maybe a client where every time that you design their warehouses always are the same specs, you can set up a scheme for that particular client. We can click this new scheme button right here. And I will say that this is going to be our example scheme. And we can say for this example scheme, their walls are always going to be 30 feet high, and maybe they never have a wall-based trim, and maybe they have a different type of door. We'll just say that they've got a 2-panel door, something like that. Again, this is all just kind of hypothetical, but let's say that every time that you work with this client, they have these certain specifications. You can save this scheme for that particular client. Once you have created it, you can go over to this ellipse on the right where it says more, and then you can actually save this. Now, this is going to save it into your CET drawing, whatever you're currently in, and it's also going to save into your CET documents. So if you go to that More button again and you click Open, this is going to open to your CET documents. So when you download CET, in your Documents folder, you're going to automatically have a CET Documents folder that is created. Okay, your CET Documents folder is where all of your reusable files live. And we're going to talk about reusable files again later today. So this is just a taste. Now, all of your reusable files are going to be within these CET documents. So you'll see that I've got lots of different folders that are available here. So I've got my auto saves, I've got custom view modes, I've got all kinds of different things available for me here for my reusable files. And in my schemes folder, I'm going to have my different wall settings. Okay, so I can pop right in there and get into my wall scheme, and there is my wall scheme that I have just saved. So you don't have to have this in every drawing. Once you save it, it's going to automatically be in your CET documents. So if you're working on a project for that particular client that needs that special scheme, all you have to do is come in here, click open, pop into the scheme that is for that particular client, open it up, and that scheme will be available. And then you can go ahead and start adding in your architecture, and it will have all of those properties automatically applied. Now, whichever tab you have selected, that is the group of properties that are going to be applied when you start to bring your architecture in. So you can toggle between them in an individual drawing as well. So if I were to bring a wall in right now, it's going to have these properties. And then if I toggled over to this example, when I bring a wall in, it's going to be different. It's going to have this set of properties. Now this gets a little bit even more in depth when we go all the way down to our materials section. This is where you can go to actually apply materials to your different areas. So if you want to have a different material applied to, let's say, your wall-based trim, we can select the wall-based trim. We're just going to go ahead and click on the three dots next to the wall-based trim here. And this is going to open up our Material Explorer. So from here, we can select a material. You are going to have your CET materials, and then you may have some things in your manufacturer materials as well. My materials is for materials that you have created on your own. So this is more of an advanced tab, but you will have things in the CET materials. You can browse through all of them here, or you can choose a specific category of materials. So maybe if we want to have some kind of plastic as our wall trim, maybe we want this to be a rubber wall trim, something like that. We can go ahead and apply that material. So we're just going to select the material we want and click out of our Material Explorer. And now our wall-based trim will be this light rubber. Same thing for the wall itself. If we wanted to adjust the wall material, maybe we want this to be some kind of, maybe we want a concrete material, or maybe we want it to be more like just a plain plaster wall, or maybe we want cinder blocks, something like that. We can go ahead and choose one of these materials for that particular wall. Maybe we want to do concrete for these walls. All right, so we've gotten those applied now. After we have adjusted our default, we don't have to save. It's going to automatically retain whatever you set in this default tab, and it will keep that as your default. Every drawing that you open from here on out, after you change these defaults, your walls and your architecture will come in with your default preferences. If you adjust to a different scheme, if you change to a different scheme, that is when they will adjust to those different preferences. But if you make a scheme change, so let's say that I wanted to change my material for this example scheme, notice that my name of my scheme and the materials are now in italics. That is showing me that I have made a change to this scheme that has not been saved. So your defaults, you do not have to save any changes. It's automatically going to stay there for you. But any additional schemes that you create, you do need to make sure that you are saving them after you make any kind of edits. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and click over to our default scheme here, and that's what we're going to use today. So I've got my default scheme selected. Now I'm going to go ahead and click the X to close out of my wall schemes. Okay, we're going to come back to this wall settings portion after we have some walls in our drawing already. So we're going to come straight down to where it says walls. Now you'll notice that the first tool is a nested tool group. So we have thin, regular, and thick walls, and then we also have a continuous wall tool. Today, we're going to be looking at the regular wall tool. So this one's going to take care of pretty much all of your needs. Your walls are going to be able to be stretched. They will have stretch nodes on them after they are placed in your drawing. So you can feel free to use these however you need to. And if you make any kind of changes, or if you need to make any adjustments, you can absolutely change them using those stretch nodes. Now we do have that default thickness set. And when I'm looking at my wall here that's on my cursor versus this wall that's here in my CAD plan, I can see that this is a much thicker wall. I will be able to use my stretch nodes on my wall once I get it placed to make it the exact correct size to match my CAD plan. When we get to our exercise, I'm going to have you guys just put walls in at whatever thickness you have set for your wall schemes. Okay. When we are talking about these different types of walls, the regular wall is going to come in with your preferences that you have set for your wall schemes. A thin wall is going to be like a paper thin, like a poster of a wall. Okay. I recommend that you do not use these unless you really have to. They do not work well with other tools. If you have a situation like this where you're doing one wall on one side and then one wall on the other, you will not be able to put any kind of door opening or anything like that. These other tools do not work very well with the thin walls. So you're going to want to use this regular wall. A thick wall is the same as a regular wall, but it comes in a little bit thicker. However, I find that usually even a thick wall is not exactly the size that I need it to be. So I'm going to need to use those stretch nodes to adjust it anyway. So to really save some time, I just use my regular walls. Okay, so let's go ahead and start to bring some walls in. I'm going to go ahead and start kind of off the top here, off of this CAD plan so you can kind of just see what they look like out in space. I have my wall tool going. So I've left clicked on my wall tool. And now I'm going to left click to anchor it. So wherever I want this to start, I'm just going to left click. And now I can move away from that initial point and I can go in any direction. The way that this is going to look is based on that angle step. You do have the adjustment for your angle step right here as well. So if you find that you want to change it on the fly, you do have the option. Instead of digging into your control panel, you do have your angle step option right here. But I find for most of us, 45 is plenty. So we're going to go ahead and start with just a straight wall here. So I've left click to anchor it. And as I move away, check out my quick properties. That length property is changing as I'm moving my mouse. Now I can either choose a point that's on a CAD plan, or if I have some help lines drawn, I can go ahead and snap to different points on that help line. Or what I can do is I can actually type in a value. So maybe I want this to be a 20-foot wall. I can type in 20 feet. And now it is exactly 20 feet. If I move my cursor around, I will get a 20-foot wall in any of those directions. Okay. So we can go ahead and left click to place that. And now that wall is in my drawing. It's got the preferences that I've set, so that 40-foot height, and it's also got that rubber base trim like I've set up in my wall schemes. So there we go. It's good to go. Now let's take a look at these stretch nodes. You've got two stretch nodes on either end, and then you've also got two stretch nodes in the center. So the stretch nodes at the end are going to allow you to left click and drag to adjust the length of your wall. The stretch nodes in the center are going to allow you to left click and drag to adjust the width. Now, if you have a wall that's lined up on a particular line, like a CAD line, you can choose which side of the wall you'd like to move. So maybe let's say that the bottom line was already exactly where it needed to be, but the top part, we know that maybe it needs to be adjusted for the width. We can left click and drag and move that to where it needs to be. Notice my quick properties. I can also type in a value here. So if I know that this is going to be an 8-inch thick wall, I can just type in that value and it will be the exact value that I need it to be. Now, in your quick properties, when you select a wall, you can adjust all of these individually here. I find that you have a little bit more control if you use the stretch nodes. If I just go to change, let's say the thickness, we can change this to 4 inches. Notice that I don't get to choose which side is moving. So if I've already placed this in a very specific spot, I might need to adjust this to a different position if I just change the thickness here within my quick properties. So that's kind of the pros and cons of using the stretch nodes versus the quick properties box. Okay, now we can change individual properties as well. So if we want to go to this more properties box, we can adjust those properties for this individual wall. So let's say that this individual wall needs to have a larger trim height or something like that. We can adjust these on an individual basis as needed beyond what we set up for those wall schemes. Okay, now that we've got a wall in our drawing, let's talk about what these wall settings do. The first one is this appearance. So if I select the appearance dropdown, normal is just normal, whatever kind of preferences we have set. A low appearance is going to create a very low wall. This is great for if you have a bunch of like private offices. Maybe you've got like a large space, but then you've got some smaller like control rooms or something like that. You can actually show where those walls are going to be without really getting in the way of seeing your product. So you can represent where those walls are meant to be, where those doors are meant to be, without creating some kind of blocker of your view. The next one is transparent. So this will give you a transparent outline of your wall. And you can also choose the color of this outline as well. And when you do that, you can just click on the color block that is next to transparent. You can pick the color that you want it to be, and that is the color of the lines that will appear. And now when you adjust the appearance, it's going to adjust it for all of the walls in your drawing. So I had this existing wall here before. So just know that it's going to do this to every wall that is in your drawing. Okay, so let's go ahead and change it back to normal. All right. Now, when you are attaching walls to one another, you have a couple different ways that you can do this. You want to think about the space that you are actually creating. So for example, if I know that this is a 20-foot wall, if I know that that wall is actually 20 feet, I'm going to want to add my next wall to this outer corner so that my length of my original wall remains 20 feet. Notice that when I added it to that corner and created a wall going in this direction, CET finished that corner for me. I'll show you on this side. If I were to select this outer corner and come down, notice that the thickness of this wall is going to adjust the length of this top wall, okay? So now my distance here is no longer 20 feet. Did I start it with 20 feet? CET, I'm pretty sure that I told you 20 feet. Oh, I stretched it with my stretch notes. That's why. But notice that there's a difference here between the interior wall and that exterior. So you do just want to be careful when you are adding walls that you're mindful of where you are putting those walls. So remember in this example, I had the end of my wall. Let's say that this was a set length that I knew it needed to be. If I add my wall to that outer corner, it's going to retain that length. However, if I add an additional wall to this outer corner on the left, it's going to adjust my wall length. Okay, so that's just one thing to kind of keep in mind. I'm sure if you have been working in CAD or anything like that, it's kind of an obvious one, makes a lot of sense. It's a common sense thing, but it is good to note because CET will connect these walls for you. And so you just have to be really careful with that. If you come up here and you say, okay, I want to connect right here, you might not even notice that you are actually overlapping a bit. So you do just want to be careful with that initial placement of that wall when you are adding individual walls together. Now you'll notice that as I'm placing this next wall, I'm getting some drawing aids. And so CET is recognizing that I've already got a wall placed here. So I'm getting these drawing aids that are positioned in. I'm trying not to spaz you out too much here with my gesturing with my cursor. But you'll see that I'm getting a point to snap to that is exactly parallel with that existing wall. And so these drawing aids will appear to help you out and they will save you some time. So there we go. So we can just connect corner to corner and then we've got our space. All right. Same kind of thing when we're talking about space. If we've already got a defined size here, if you go to stretch your wall size, your wall thickness, again, this is where you want to actually use those stretch nodes instead of selecting a value here in the quick properties. Because let's say that I need a very specific interior size, but your wall needs to be a little bit thicker. You can stretch away from that interior space to create that thicker wall while maintaining the same size inside. If you use those quick properties, occasionally it will not stretch in the direction that you intend to, and it's actually changing the interior space size, which can make space planning kind of you'll end up with a space that you do not intend to have. Okay. All right, so there's walls. Next, let's talk about columns. So, I want to show you on this CAD plan as an example. So if you have a CAD plan in your drawing, again, you do want to make sure that you have that locked down so you're not accidentally moving it. And you want to make sure that your 2D position is set to front and that you've got Activate 2D on. Then your CAD plan is ready to have walls applied. So let's go ahead and use these regular walls. I'm going to go ahead and just start in this top corner. You can zoom in to get an easier connection there. Now notice that when I'm applying this to my CAD plan, as I'm bringing my wall out, I've got this purple outline. Okay, so right now my wall is on the wrong side of that line. I'm following this line, but my wall that I'm creating is on the wrong side. But I do have a purple outline in the area that I want my wall to be. So when I place this wall, I'm going to left click to place it. CET is going to allow me to select which side of the line I actually want to create that wall on. So I'm going to choose that interior side to place that line there. So as you are creating walls using a CAD plan, you will get those purple lines that will pop up. And as long as your wall that you want to create is either where it looks like it is as you're placing it, or is in the purple outline, that purple ghost outline, either way, that will work for you because after you select your length, you left click, and then you can choose which side of the line you actually want to place it on. All right. Now let's talk about these stretch nodes. Let's say that I want to make this wall just a little bit thicker. It will snap to that line for me. So it makes it nice and easy to add these all together. Now I can, again, choose where I want to start all of these walls. Maybe I want it to be this exterior side. And if things are misplaced, so I can see that this wall is kind of not really in the right place here. I've got some things kind of moving around. I can actually just grab those stretch nodes and stretch it and snap it wherever I need it to be. So here's a really kind of extreme example. So let's say that I've placed that wall and it's not quite where I want it to be. These are really, really user friendly. Again, you just grab that stretch node and just stick it in place wherever it needs to be. And again, you can use those stretch nodes to stretch it out. Now, I do want to call out one other thing with walls that does happen pretty frequently. One kind of frustration that I see fairly often. If you place a wall, sometimes what will happen is you will try to adjust a wall where the length becomes confused with the thickness of the wall. So if you create a wall like this, let's, what are you doing, wall? There we go. Okay. So this one looks like a normal wall, kind of, right? However, if I click on it, I can see that those center stretch nodes are actually at the ends of what my wall would be. This wall is not going to behave properly for you. You're not going to be able to apply a door to it or anything like that because it is considering this edge, this flat part, as the end of the wall. So you do just want to be careful as you are adjusting your walls with your stretch nodes that the stretch nodes that are in the center, you are controlling that as your thickness, and the ones that are on the ends are your length. Okay. If you ever find yourself in a situation where your wall is just really not working, double check to see if maybe your stretch nodes are at the ends of your walls. If that's the case, that means that you've stretched your wall the wrong way. All right. So there we go. Okay. After you place walls in your drawing, you're able to add other architecture elements to them. So if we wanted to add doors, we can go ahead and select the door that we want to add, and then we can hover in either 2D or 3D. Let's find a bigger wall here. And as I hover near the wall, you'll see that it's going to snap to the wall for me. I can type in preferences for my door before I even place my wall. Or if I'm working with a CAD plan, I can just left click on one end of the door side and then left click again on the other. So I'm going to pretend that I have something to reference here. So I'll say that I had a point here on my CAD plan and then maybe another point here that I'm snapping to. When you are placing doors, don't worry about the door swing or anything like that. Just worry about the size of the door at first. The reason why I say that is because it's extremely easy to adjust the swing of the door after the fact. It's a little bit harder when you are adding things in. To CET to get it to be in the correct orientation as you are adding it in. So you're going to spend more time kind of fussing with that than is worth. So you just put it in at the correct size. And then once the door is in your drawing, you can click on this outer portion of the door to select the door itself. If you click where the door is on the wall, it will actually select the wall and the door, which is not what we want. Click on the door section where it shows the swing of the door to select just the door. And then you've got a green arrow to toggle whether it swings in or out. And then you've got a blue toggle to choose where your hinge side is. So again, just set your size for your door first, and then use those green and blue arrows to toggle your door swing. Now you do have stretch nodes here as well. You've got some on either side, and then you've also got one in the center. The ones on the side allow you to adjust the size of the door. And then the one in the center is going to adjust the width. Try not to use the one in the center. Doors will automatically come in at the width of the wall that they are snapped to. You do have to have a wall in your drawing to put a door in. If you try to just put a door in your drawing somewhere where there is no wall, it will not allow you to. So it will kind of look like it's going to place it, but it will disappear on you. It does have to be snapped to a wall for it to stay. Okay. And that stretch node in the center, this will adjust the size of that door, but it ends up being really goofy. Okay. So try not to use that stretch node to change the thickness of the door. It will automatically set itself to the appropriate size to match the wall. Now, one really cool thing is if we adjust the wall size with a door that is attached, that door size will automatically adjust to fit that new wall size. So once you've got your doors in there, you don't have to worry if you have to go back after the fact and adjust some thicknesses. They are all attached and they will stretch right along with that wall. The same is true for windows. So to put a window in your drawing, you're going to select the window tool, select the wall that you want to put it on. You can put it in either 2D or 3D. You can adjust the elevation of the wall. You can adjust the height, or I'm sorry, of the window. You can adjust the height of the window, the width of the window, all of these different things. Again, if you're working on a CAD plan, you can just select where it begins and where it ends on that CAD plan. Maybe this is a high window. Maybe we're, 20 feet up, something like this. And you do have stretch nodes available here as well. In the 2D view, you're going to see that you've got the ability to adjust the length here. Again, you do have the ability to adjust the width, but I wouldn't mess with that because it does attach to the wall and it's going to be the appropriate width automatically. But in 3D, you've got some extra options. You have these two cylinders. And I want you to be really mindful of where these cylinders are because there is a piece of glass here. So it is really easy to think that you're clicking on the piece of glass, but notice that my cursor is blue here. I have to actually come over to the side of the glass where I can actually touch the stretch node to work that stretch node, okay? If I go to the other side of my window, I'll have a little bit more space here to work with that. But again, just be mindful of your cursor color. Even though it looks like I'm grabbing the stretch node right here, I'm not, okay? Now, these are going to adjust your placement of your window. So the bottom one is going to adjust your elevation. And the top one's going to change how large this window actually is. So this is going to be the height of the window itself. Okay. There we go. Now, again, when we talked about view modes, if we wanted to see just our architecture, we can go into that architectural view mode and you'll see that all of that other stuff that I had added into my drawing previously disappears. I can go back into my normal view mode and I will see everything again. Now, one other thing to mention with the walls, if you move away from the wall drawing tab, let's say that I move into my characters extension. If I try to click on any of my walls or I look at any of my walls, I'm getting this gray outline. And remember, the gray outline also happens when we block position on things. Okay. So I am not able to actually delete or move these walls here because I am not in the wall drawing extension. And what that does is it protects you from accidentally moving walls. This is especially helpful if you have things like columns in the middle of your drawing and you're trying to just select a bunch of stuff in the middle of your drawing, and it's going to pick up all of those columns as well. This prevents you from accidentally grabbing those architectural items. If for some reason you really, really, really need to be able to adjust your walls or architecture items while you have another extension active, which this is, it does happen occasionally. If you really, really need to adjust that function, this lockbox right here, if you unlock it, that will allow you to make adjustments to your walls and things while you are not on that current wall tab. Okay. But once you are done with whatever that specific scenario is, please make sure that you do lock it again. This is a safety net for you, and it really will help you in the long run, and it really does make a difference. You will be thankful for that function. But just don't be frustrated if you're like, I just need to move this column. Why can't I move this column? Remember, you do need to be in the walls tab to be able to adjust your architecture. Okay, so now let's talk about some columns. So we've got some walls in our drawing, and let's say that we have some columns that we want to add in now. So I'm going to go ahead and add some columns here in a couple of these spaces on my CAD plan, just as an example. Here is the first column. I can choose how large I want this column to be. So maybe I want the thickness to be 12 inches or something. Okay. Now, when I adjust this column, I'm going to be able to see what it looks like here. But let's say that I wanted to snap it into place. And you'll see that it it behaves similar to those palettes where the snap point is in the center. So it can be really difficult to position this exactly where I need it to be because that snap point is in the center. So if we have a situation where we need to add a column into a particular spot, but it's being difficult, there's a couple ways that we can accomplish this. The first way is to just put it somewhere near where you need it to be and then position it. Okay, so I'm gonna let's go ahead and I'm gonna say that I've got a help line here that's 12 inches because my actual column in my drawing here is not a square. So I'm gonna say that this is where I need this to be. Okay, so let's say that this is where this is meant to be. Okay, but I can't get it to snap really in the center. I can kind of eyeball it, but that's not ideal. So remember, we have our position tool. We can use that position tool to grab any point here. So I'm just going to grab one of the corners and then I can position it into place. That is one of the easiest ways to accomplish this. Now, let's say that we have a situation. I'm going to go ahead and make several copies here. Let's say that we have a situation where we need to add lots of columns to our drawing, okay? That is a good time to use copy with a base point. So again, you can do copy with the base point here under the edit dropdown, or you can use the keyboard shortcut Control-Shift-C. I'm going to say I want to copy this column, and now I'm going to pick a base point. So I'll go ahead and pick a corner. And now I can go ahead and continue to make copies using that bottom corner as my reference and create all of those copies in my drawing. Okay, now I'm going to show you one more really cool tool, but this is something that I would like you to use with caution. It works really well sometimes, but works not so great other times. This is going to be generating thin walls on entity or layer. Okay. Now what we're going to do is we're going to use this tool and we can create thin walls on a CAD layer or entity. This is really dependent on your CAD plan and how it was created. If you have layers that are appropriate for this, you'll see some CAD plans, it works really well. Some CAD plans, it does not. So if I choose to generate a thin wall on an entity, I can hover over some entity. And I can do this in 2D or 3D. So let's say that I have this column right here. I can left click on it. And when I left click on it, I will get these thin walls that are placed all the way around. Now notice instead of being a solid column, I have 4 walls and then I've got this center wall as well. If I try to apply this to a layer, so here we go, here's all of those columns. If I have a CAD plan that was designed really nicely where all of my columns are on a nice, beautiful layer, I can use this tool to apply those thin walls to all of those columns. So if you find yourself in a situation where you can actually use this tool, that's fantastic. I will say though, use it with caution. If I'm hovering over some of these other layers, notice that I'm getting a lot of different things. If I hover over where these walls are, if I wanted to just kind of cheat and create some walls that way, it will create those walls, but I will not be able to create any kind of doors. It's going to be a huge pain for me if I need to make adjustments because let's say that I wanted this to be a little bit shorter. I would need to do it for each side of that wall. They don't play well with others, but if you just need to get something in there really quickly, you do have these tools available. Okay. One other word of caution with this is sometimes your CAD plans will be very large. And let's say that you're trying to apply thin walls to your columns. It's possible that you might not have um, the ability to do that. It might say that there's too many things that are selected in that layer and it cannot actually generate it. If that's the case, you can go by entity and you can actually use this like a rectangle select. So you can left click and drag and anything that is in that area will have the thin walls applied to that entity. So let's say that I had a bunch of columns. I'm going to go ahead and escape here. Let's say that I had a bunch of columns in this space. I could go ahead and rectangle select with this generate thin walls on entities, and then try to get just my columns there. Again, a lot of this is very highly dependent on the CAD plan itself and how the CAD plan was designed. Now you do have the ability to remove thin walls as well. So let's say that I didn't want all of these thin walls on this layer. I could go ahead and make that adjustment. So now those are removed. Okay, one more thing to talk about with columns. When I was adding these columns, they are kind of a pain to work with. Your columns can be adjusted by shape. So if you wanted a different shape, this is a great tool to use. So let's say that you had some round columns instead, or something else, some other kind of shape here, one of these shapes. This is a great time to use the column tool. However, most of the time, I find that it is significantly easier to just put a wall where I need those columns to be. And the reason for that is because these wall tools are going to snap in position for me. Things are being a little slow because I've got all of these thin walls. That's one of the other drawbacks of using these thin walls. I'm going to go ahead and remove all of these thin walls because they do not behave very well in CET. Okay, there we go. Let's say that I wanted to use just the regular wall tool instead. Now this is going to snap for me wherever I need this wall to be. And then I can just stretch it to be the correct size. So if you've got things that are kind of a funny shape, you can use this tool. And again, you could do a copy or a copy with a base point. So if I do a Control-Shift-C, I can then copy this wall and then choose that base point and just create all of the copies that I need that are the appropriate size already. One other benefit of using the wall instead of the column tool for your columns is that you can have that base trim. So maybe you want to apply some kind of guarding to your column in the center. You can actually set your trim height to be something like 3 feet. And then you can make this like a yellow paint or something like that. So it can look a little bit more true to life for your spaces. You are not going to be able to do any kind of sheathing or anything like that on your columns. Okay, so if you want to create this type of thing on your columns in the interior space, you do want to use a wall tool to create those columns so that way you can apply the wall trim. Okay. All right. So this is going to bring us to our exercise. And what I would like you guys to do for this exercise, I know there's a CAD plan here showing, but what I would like you to do is I would like you to create a simple warehouse, and we're going to go 100 feet by 100 feet. Okay, so you're going to use your wall tool and you are going to create a space that's 100 feet by 100 feet. Now you can go ahead and do this by just using your wall tool, or if you would like to go in and use your help lines, you can create that space first using your help lines and then going over it with your walls. Then once you've got your walls in your drawing, I would love for you to add a couple doors and a couple windows wherever you would like, however you would like. I just want you to kind of experiment with the tools and get a little bit used to them. And if you're looking for an additional challenge, go ahead and add some columns to your drawing. You can use that position tool to get them into position wherever you would like. And you can use a copy. You could use a copy with a directional arrow and a set distance. So maybe you want to do a to next copy and go maybe every 10 feet or something like that. Whatever you want to do, you can challenge yourself and try to add some of those columns in. You can even create a column using that wall tool and do the same thing if you'd like. And as that additional challenge, you can also add a roller door. Okay, so I'm going to give you a few minutes to work on this one. This one is a, so please feel free to ask if you have any questions. I'm going to give you probably 4 or 5 minutes to work on this one to really kind of get a feel for it. Now, I will say that this portion is not required. You can absolutely just space plan on top of a CAD plan. You never actually have to bring walls into your space. So you are able to, just quickly generate your quotes. But the walls do really help to give you that 3D visual when you are rendering later on. Okay, there's a question. Is there a quick way to generate your column centerline grid? We don't have anything specifically for that, but if you wanted to create your own, you can start with either a dashed line from your drawing tools, or you can use a help line, and then you can use your replicate tools down here. So I'm going to do a linear replicate. And for this, I'm going to select what I want to replicate. I'm going to uncheck my pick start point because I want this original one to be the start point. So I'm going to select that line. And now I can choose how far between I want these to be. So if I want my gap to be 10 feet between. Okay, there we go. Sorry about that. So I'm going to use my linear replicate tool down here in my tools area. got my linear replicate tool. I'm going to select what I want to replicate and then set my gap. And I can create or I can type a directional arrow to lock in that direction. So for here, I just typed in my right directional arrow. And then I can just fill the space, or I can give it a quantity, or I can give it a total length, either way. And then after I click that, I will have all of those lines. And so I can do the same thing the other way as well if I wanted to create that grid. So I can go ahead and do something like this. And then I would have that grid. So nothing specifically for those center lines, but you can absolutely use your help lines and the replicate tools to do that. You can use that replicate tool on pretty much anything. There are a few things that don't work really well with it, but for almost everything you can use it. These replicate tools as well, we're not covering these today, but they are really cool for if you wanted to use a rectangular replicate for your column. So let's say that you have um, you have a column. I'm going to go to my wall drawing tab to copy this column out here. Let's go ahead and copy it, say that it's right there. Then I can go into my tools tab and I'm going to do a linear replicate. This is one of those very few situations where I'm going to want to be able to work with an architectural item at the same time as something else. So I am going to need to unlock my walls here. Okay, this is one of the very few times when you need to do that. It's when you need to replicate some kind of architectural item. I'm not going to pick a start point because my start point is already where I want it to be. I can select that. And then with this replicate tool, I can say that I want to next both in my X and my Y axis. And we're going to say that they're 10 feet from one another here. And we're going to go 10 feet here as well. And we should start to get our copies. I don't want to have a total length there. We're just going to go by gap. There we go. So I wasn't exactly center here. Some stuff's a little bit kind of goofy. But you can see that you can use this rectangular replicate to replicate out your columns. So again, we're not going over this in our class today, but if you dig into the help articles, there is a help article for the replicate tool. So you look at your rectangular replicate. That's a really good use of the rectangular replicate is for adding those columns, replicating those columns. Just keep in mind that you do have to unlock your lock here on your wall drawing tab to be able to use the replicate tools on a column. All right. How are you guys doing on this exercise? So when you're placing walls in your drawing, you're actually going to get that trim on both sides of the wall. Um, so it's going to come in, they're going to be the same, interior or exterior. For the windows, there is a kind of designation for interior versus exterior, and that's going to be this little blue triangle that's next to your windows. The blue triangle is going to be the outside, and the difference will be how large the sill is. So you can see the interior has more space on that sill. But as far as the actual walls go, you'll see that both the interior and the exterior have that wall trim. Okay, so next up is the Speedrack extension. And one thing that I wanted to have you guys do for this is to download the Essential Palette Racking extension. And the reason for that is because there's a couple accessories that will now work with the Speedrack extension. So this is going to be the chipboard and the wire mesh. We can now add those from the Essential Palette Racking extension and get we can see them properly in calculations if we want to add those to our SpeedRack projects. So, real quick, I'm going to have you guys go to the marketplace. I can also I can demonstrate this for you. And if you want to just kind of keep it in your back pocket, if that's something that you want to use, you can go ahead and feel free to download this later if you would like. But you're going to go ahead and head to the marketplace. The fastest way is from within CET, your little person icon up on the top right. If you click that, you'll get this menu. And then you're going to click on Marketplace. And then from the Marketplace, you will see the essential extensions up on the top. And we are looking at the essential palette racking. So you can go ahead and click that install button. And then probably towards the end of the Speedrack section, we can talk about how those tools can be combined with the Speedrack extension. Okay, so let's go ahead and jump into it. Now, like I said, there was an update for 16.5, so that was just very, very recently. So the image here is a little bit different. So let's go ahead and compare. So I'm going to go ahead and open up the Speedrack extension. And on the top, you've got two different tabs. You've got project and you've got products. So when we look at the project tab, we now have an additional slider, an additional toggle, and that is for high detailed graphics. Okay. And then in our products, we have adjusted the arrangement a little bit of the sections. Okay, so when you use this as your reference, just know that this has been updated slightly, and you'll see that we've got our main components in their own section, and then we've got some universal accessories. So these guys are now in an accessories section. And we also have an additional toggle, and that is to use standard dimensions. Okay. All right, so let's go ahead and take a look at the project tab first. So when we are working in the Speedrack extension, when you navigate to that project tab, the first option that you have is for project information. So if we click on project information, this is going to open up our project information dialog window. And this is used to capture any kind of details about your project for your file. This is going to also allow you to create data fields when you get into your paper pages. You're going to be able to recall information from this project information that you put in to automatically be generated in other areas when you go to generate this, when you create your deliverable. So whether it's your paper pages or your quote that you are printing from your calculation. So you can add any kind of information that you would like here. You have order information and you also have your revision information. So you can add descriptions of the revision and the date here as well. Once you have saved or once you have entered in your information, so we will go ahead and say that this is our caps lock custom training. We can go ahead and click apply. And now that will be saved to this project. So when I click that project information again, I still have that custom training project name. If I wanted to enter in any other information, I could do that here. Maybe let's go ahead and put in, we'll say that this is our prelim drawing, something like that. We'll click apply to save. And now that is all saved in our project. Okay, next we have some elevation tools. Now, I'm going to skip these for right now until after we bring some actual product into our drawing. But what these are going to do is these are going to allow us to see elevation views of the product that we bring in. Next, we have our validate drawing tool. So this is going to allow you to check for any kind of errors within your drawing. Again, we will come back to this after we add some actual product in, but this is just a good way to double check that there's no errors in any of your smart symbols. So the smart symbols are going to be the symbols that you are bringing in from your Speedrack extension. So those are those symbols that have the information programmed right into them. All right. Now there are, yes, I would love that, Corey. That would be fantastic. All right. Or you are welcome to unmute as well if you've got a microphone. All right. We're going to circle back to those. Thank you, Corey. All right. Now you also do have links at the bottom as well. So if you want to go in to see the products, you can get right into the products from that link. Or you can also click the contact us button and this will open up an email contact form. Okay, no problem. All right. Okay, so let's go ahead and look at our products tab. Okay, so when we think about our products, what we're going to do first is we're actually going to think about this as what we want to have on our racking. So we're going to set up a unit load first or several unit loads. And then we're going to go into our pre-configurator, which is going to allow us to predefine some whole system customization. So whether we want it to be double deep, whether we want it to be all single rows, that type of thing. We're going to look at whole system configuration. And then we're going to add our racking into our drawing. After we add our racking into our drawing, we can make further edits using the Bay editor. And then we can use our other tools to further customize. Okay. When we are starting, we're going to start with our unit load editor. Okay. So quick explanation of those different products tab tools that are available right up at the top. Our spread tools are down at the bottom. I'll go ahead and show you that. So at the very bottom, we've got spread tools here. Okay. So when you're first starting a drawing, you're going to want to set up your unit loads first. You want to think about what is actually being stored. And the way that the racking system is going to be populated within CET is all based on the information that you're going to use from these unit loads and then from your pre-configuration. So your clearance between loads and all of your different preferences that you're setting up here. Now you can go back after the fact and make adjustments. So if you're not sure right away, you can go ahead and use a standard template, make some best guess assumptions and then go back after the fact if they need to really customize something. But the best way to start is by jumping into that unit load editor. When you open the unit load editor, you are going to be able to see a unit load preview on the right. You're going to have your unit loads listed in a dropdown. So if you have any unit loads that you've already added, they will be listed here. But if you don't have any unit loads added or you want to add a new unit load, what you can do is you can click on this Add New button. Clicking on the Add New button is going to open up your unit load templates dialog box. You can choose what type of unit loads you'd like to add. So let's say that you wanted to add some North American pallets. Maybe you know that they're going to be storing drums. Okay, so let's use drums as an example. We can go ahead and select this. We'll be able to see the preview. If this is what is appropriate for you, you can go ahead and click Use Template. And then from there, you will now have that template as part of your drop-down list here. Now, when you are adding unit loads, you are going to have the palette predefined. So you'll see that the palette sizes are not able to be adjusted. If you have a very specific palette size that you need to use, you're going to want to use a custom palette. So that's going to be in the miscellaneous palettes, and we're going to go custom size. You can go ahead and use that template. And now you'll see for this custom size, we can adjust the palette sizes here. So if you have a customer who's got a very, maybe a 2-inch palette height, something like that, you can make these adjustments, okay? The rest of the palettes are going to come in with the standard sizes already locked in for you, okay? Now, besides the palette, you can adjust everything else about this unit load. So we're going to talk about what we want to actually put on that pallet. So once we've selected the pallet that we're using, we can make adjustments for the actual unit load. So we can determine the height. Maybe this is going to be a 2,000-pound unit load, and we can choose the width, the length, and the height. Maybe this is only going to be 3 feet high, something like that. And you can see as I'm making these adjustments, these dimensions are automatically updating to suit whatever I am selecting here within these properties. Your total height is going to be determined by your pallet height plus your load height. So this one will be automatically calculated for you. You can also choose whether or not you actually want to show the load. So it's still going to calculate all of these sizes for you when you are figuring out all of your clearances, but you can choose whether or not you actually want to show that when you apply this into your system. You can choose the direction of the load. You can also choose the texture. So if you want this to be a specific material, you can choose it here. This will be some kind of material that you've already saved. So some kind of image. Here's a random image that I have. If I wanted to apply that to this particular unit load, you'll see that I've got that texture applied. If you have a very specific image of whatever product you want to be on this unit load to be applied, you can use that texture. You do not have to add a texture at all, but you do have the option to apply that if you would like. You can change the color. So right now I've got this white for our Speedrack unit load, but if I wanted to adjust the color, I could change it to any color that I would like here. And then I can also change the logo. So right now I've got a Speedrack logo. If I wanted to adjust the logo, I could adjust that to suit whatever my needs were. I can change the size of the logo here as well by using the slider. And then once I've done that, I'm going to want to save it. So I can either save current or save all. So if I've made a bunch of adjustments, I can save all of them all at once. Now let's go ahead and look at our drums palette here. Let's go ahead and change the color of this to something that's maybe a little bit more, I don't know, something like this. There we go. All right, we're going to go ahead and leave the defaults for everything else. Maybe change the Okay, so now we've got those adjustments made. I'm going to go ahead and save that. Now, a couple really, really cool things that we can do with our unit loads. These are now, as of 16.5, they are able to be saved as a reusable file. So once you have your unit load selected, you can actually save it as a template. So I've gotten my unit load selected here. I've made my updates. I can actually do this save as template. This is going to want to save in your CET documents, and you do have a unit loads folder. So I can go ahead and save this 55-gallon drum pallet in my unit loads folder. And now if I want to use this in another drawing, I can come into my file dropdown, click open, navigate to my CET documents, unit loads, select the one that I would like to use in this drawing, and bring it in, and it will be available for me to use. All right. Now there is a way to not use a unit load, and we'll talk about that when we get into the pre-configuration. There is an option to select no unit load. So if you're in a situation where you don't know what type of unit loads are going to be used, I will show you how you can do that. That is a really good question. Typically, you can use kind of your best judgment if it's a North American warehouse or, something else. You can set up a unit load just as like a placeholder if you want to. But there is a way to just select no unit loads if you are working off of um, just those other details. I will say though that if you have unit load information, sometimes it can be more efficient to design with that unit load information because it's entirely possible that you might be able to fit even more unit loads than maybe originally was planned. Um, there are always manufacturing specifications and limitations and all of that, but sometimes you can actually maximize your storage space and your footprint by giving the actual unit load information if you have it, if it's available to you. But I will go over how to skip the unit load part when we get into the pre-configurator. Okay, so now this one is saved. Again, this is great for if you have like a client that you work with frequently and they're storing the same types of things frequently. You can save these and reuse them again and again. Or if you just have some standards that you like to use frequently, you can absolutely save them to recall later. Okay, so now once we've gotten our unit loads added and saved, now we can actually jump into our pre-configurator. So we've gone over our unit loads, we've adjusted them. Now let's go ahead and jump into the pre-configurator. Now again, I do want to just call out that there are help articles that are linked to all of these things. So if you want to check those out at a later time, or if you need to get a refresher, maybe you check this out and you're like, oh gosh, I just can't remember what she did. Jump into that help article and that will help you to remember these things in the future. Okay, so now let's open up our pre-configurator. All right, so pre-configurator is going to work sort of similarly to that wall scheme where we can have several different types of configurations if we would like. We've got our default, and that's what we're going to use for right now. But if you want, you can actually save configurations and you can recall them later. So if there's a configuration that you use frequently, you can save it as a reusable file, pull it into your drawing and use it just then. If there are multiple configurations that you plan to use in a specific drawing, you can also click this new button. And this will allow you to have multiple different configurations within the same drawing. And you can toggle between them as you are creating your racking to get the different specifications. Okay, so let's go ahead and look at the default. The first section that we have is the system. And this is going to allow you to make adjustments to the system type. So do you want a teardrop or a structural system? And then from there, based on your selection, you may have different options. So For example, if I do a single deep, I can choose to have a single end. Or maybe if I want to do a single plus a double deep, you'll see that I no longer have those additional options, right? It's what's appropriate for this particular system. So let's go ahead and do just a single deep. And I'm going to say that I want all single rows. Now you can choose to have all back to back, which is going to be all doubles. You can have single end, which is going to be a single at one side and then doubles for the rest of the system, and then a single at the last row. But for our example right now, let's go ahead and set this up as all singles. Next, we can go to our frame section. This is going to allow us to customize the frames of our system. So we can choose our column type. We can choose our base plates. So whatever is appropriate for the project that you're working on, you have all of these different ways to customize. You can select your bracing. So maybe we need heavy bracing for this. You can also choose your reinforcements. Maybe we want some reinforcement. Maybe we want none. You can select whatever is appropriate for your project. And then for the protectors, you can choose to have it with no cap. You can have it with the cap. And then you can also choose the height of that column protector as well. In the bay section, this is where you can determine your bay sizing. So if you want to just enter in bay sizing just right away, if you know your height, so your upright heights, and you know the depth and the width, you can go ahead and enter that information right here. If you're not going to be working with unit loads, this one's not as important, but if you are working with unit loads, you can select if you want the unit load to be on the floor or not. And then when we go into our levels, this is where you can choose whether or not you actually want a unit load. And I apologize. It looks like with the Speedrack extension, you guys don't have the option to choose none. So Corey, I might want to chat with you about that. In the Essential Palette Racking extension, there is an option to select none. So that might be something that you might want to look into. So I apologize. That's you do not have the option right now to not have that unit load. We can show it as 0. There we go. There we go. Your guys' is just a little bit different. There we go. Okay, we got it. Okay, so instead of choosing none here, you're still going to have a selection made, but for the number of unit loads, you can choose 0, and it will show up for you as 0. You can also choose whatever is appropriate for your project. So for our example, let's go ahead and set it to 2. There we go. All right, now you can also adjust your beams here as well for whatever is appropriate for your project. You've got these drop downs to select your beam height. You can choose your gauge. You can choose whether or not it has slots. And you can choose your beam drop. Here you'll see that range listed there when I hover over it. And you can choose if you would like an end plate to be standard or the alternate. Notice this is all listed under the size tab of level. If we go into clearances, we can also adjust our clearances here. So if there are specific clearances that we want to have for this project, we can go ahead and adjust those here. When we come down to our row section, this is where we're going to be looking at our flue gaps if we've got any back-to-backs, and also our aisle distance. So if we have anything back to back, this is where we're going to determine how much space we have for that flue gap, how many spacers we have, what type they are, and their offsets. When I go into the aisle tab, this is where we're going to determine the aisle length. And we can also choose at this point if we want to have top ties or not. If we choose to have top ties, we can choose to adjust their type, and we can also choose to adjust their offsets as well. All right. Now, if we've got multiple versions, let's say that we wanted to have a double deep here, something like this. I'll go ahead and leave everything else as the standard, um, just to show what this is going to look like when we have two different versions of pre-configurations going. We want to make sure that the pre-configuration that we want to design next in our drawing is selected here. Whatever tab I have selected is what is going to be drawn. If I had this double deep, that is what will be created. So I do want to make sure that I select the correct racking system before I start to actually build my rows by using the insert a rack system. So I can go ahead and close out the pre-configurator now, and then we can start drawing our racking. I'm going to go ahead and just add it out here. Um, let's say that this is our 100 by 100. I'm just going to use a helpline to match what you guys have. There we go. And let's say that we just want to fill this space with racking. So I can go ahead and click my insert a rack system. And this is going to give me a crosshairs on my cursor. Notice that I have the option to select which configuration I have. What will be automatically defaulted is whatever you had selected in your pre-configurator, okay? If you need to make a change, you can swap it here. So I've got that selected. Now I'm going to go ahead and pick a point. So I'm going to left click on my top left corner here, and that will anchor my system in my drawing for me. Now I can move in any direction. Again, my angle step is going to come into play here. So if I need this to be at a different angle, I can hold down my shift key to override that angle step, or I can select my angle step in my control panel to adjust it. But right now, this is perfect. And again, for most projects, this is going to work really well for you. We kind of work in a linear manner. I can see approximately how many are going to fit in this space. But as I am looking at this, I probably want to have some clearances, right? I probably want to have a little bit of space on either side, and I probably want to have a little bit of space off that wall. So you'll notice in the quick properties that you do have quite a few ways to work with this. So the first option is that configuration. So we're using our default configuration. Next, we have our row layout. I'm going to go ahead and click this drop down. So if I wanted to adjust from that all single to some other row layout, I can adjust using that drop down. I'm going to go ahead and keep mine as all single. Now I can choose the length. So if I know that I have a specific amount of space that I can use for my racking, I can go ahead and enter in a specific value, and it will generate the appropriate number of bays that will fit within that length. For our example, I'm just going to go ahead and use the entire space here. Next, I can select the number of bays. If I know that I only want to create a specific number of bays here, instead of filling up the entire space, I can enter in that quantity. I can enter a specific angle if I need this to be at a very particular angle. And then here we go, we're getting into the offsets. So if I have particular offsets that I want to have on this, I can enter them in here. So this is going to move my racking system away from that initial point and away from any other areas based on this offset. So it's going to give me a bit of a margin. So let's say that I want a 1 foot offset all the way around. Now you'll see that I've got this outline around my racking system. So as I start to build this now, even though I selected that top right corner, now I've got a foot away from this top wall and a foot away from this left wall. So depending on what types of clearances you need, you can just set your offset to easily add in those clearances. So you can just snap right to that corner and then set your offsets to get all of those appropriate clearances while still maximizing your space that you are using for your racking. Now, the last dropdown is for collision. If you have architecture within your space, so if you have columns or walls or anything else like this, you can choose to use the collision dropdown, and you can choose the behavior for that particular collision detection. If it collides with something. Let's go ahead and have it, let's see if I can get it to collide with something here that's already in my drawing. I don't think I have anything already set up. I may need to go ahead and add something in to demonstrate this. But if it does detect something in your drawing, it does have to be an actual architectural item. It's not going to recognize where a column is meant to be in a CAD plan. You actually have to have a physical architectural item. When it detects that, the bay that is colliding will turn red, and you can choose the behavior. So you can choose to remove the load that is colliding with that. You can choose to adjust to the balloon if you have column balloons in your drawing. You can choose to remove the entire bay, or you can choose to ignore that collision. Let's go ahead and start it just down here so that way you can see what happens when we collide. Let's put it right there. There we go. So as I'm colliding with these columns, you can see that they are turning red. And that shows me that I'm going to need to adjust something there because there is that collision. So if I wanted to have that collision detection perform a certain action, so maybe we wanted to remove the load, when I place this in my drawing, it will actually remove the load that is colliding with that particular column. It will keep any loads that are not colliding with that particular item. Okay. All right. So let's go ahead and fill up our space here. Again, I'm going to do some offsets and we'll go ahead and add this all in. So once you have determined your offsets and your collision detection, you can go ahead and fill your space or place your racking wherever your racking needs to be. And I'm selecting the number of bays here. And this is determined by that bay width and by my unit loads. If I'm using unit loads with my different clearances, I'm getting these different bay numbers based on all of those properties that we determined within the pre-configurator. Once I've determined the number of bays in a row, I can left click. And now I'm going to determine the number of rows that will fit within the space. Now, right now, I do have my aisle width already set within my pre-configurator, but if I wanted to adjust my aisle width, I can do that here. So let's say that we can adjust this to an 8-foot aisle width, okay? I can make those adjustments. If you find that you're not able to move your cursor around, look for anything in your quick properties that has a lockbox on it. So right now, my width is showing as locked. If you want to unlock something, you can use the space bar, and that will allow you to continue to use your mouse to determine those different distances. If there's something that you want to stay a particular value, you can use your space bar to lock it in. So let's say that I know that I want to have a specific number of aisles. I can lock in the specific number of aisles, and then even if I move my mouse, I won't be able to adjust that anymore. Okay, so if you find yourself fighting with this, double check for any locked boxes. I do want my 8-foot aisle width to remain locked here. And we'll go ahead and left click to place this in our drawing. Now, there are a couple other options here that were not available for that initial placement. And this is going to be the row alignment. So I'm going to have you see how this works. What this is going to do is this is going to change where the racking is in relation to my dotted outline with all of my offsets. So as I move this, you can see now it is aligned to the left. Now it's aligned to the back left. Now it's aligned to the front, the center, the back, front right, right, back right. Okay, so depending on where you need this to actually be placed, you can use your row alignment to do that. And then if you choose to flip the front, notice that I can't gesture at it at the same time, but notice that front will adjust based on this selection. So where do you want the front to be? Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and left click one more time to actually place this in my drawing. And now when I look at my system, I've got all of this beautiful racking in my space. Okay. All right. So once you left click to actually place these, your dialog box is going to go away. You are only going to have this dialog box as you are actually placing them. So as I'm determining these different values. And then when you left click that last time, that is when it's actually going to be generated into your drawing. All right, so let's go ahead and look at how we can work with this once it's in our drawing. Okay, remember you do have your single select and your group select mode, okay? If I am in single select mode, I can select individual aisles or I can select individual bays, okay? So notice that as I'm selecting these, I'm able to select based on wherever I'm clicking. If I'm in my 2D view, you'll notice that I'm selecting the entire bay. If I want to select individual unit loads, individual components, I can actually click this unit load view, and now I can select individual unit loads themselves. Okay, so that can be kind of a nice thing to do. So if I need to delete individual unit loads, I'm going to move into that unit load view. I'm going to go back into my normal view here. And as I'm selecting these, again, notice that I'm selecting entire bays or entire rows. If I select this system in my group select mode, notice that the entire system is selected. Okay, so we're going to want to think about that when we are talking about how we are manipulating our system. Okay, so we've talked about drawing our racking. Okay, and I'm going to have you do the exercise all together after we go over a couple more things. Once you get your racking in your system, there's going to be different ways that we can work with them. And this part can be a little bit tricky. So you do have this as a reference for you as you continue working in CET. But what I want you to think about is how you want to make your edit. So do you want to make an edit to an individual bay or a couple bays, or do you want this to apply to your entire system? You need to kind of think in this system manner. So let's say that we want to create maybe one less bay per row here. We want this whole system to be just a little bit shorter because we want a little bit more clearance, maybe on this side, maybe even two bays shorter. What I could do is while I'm in group select, I can go ahead and select any of my bays here, and I will get a little stretch node on the side. Oh, I got the wrong one. Let me go ahead and zoom in so I'm grabbing the correct one here. Okay, so I select a bay. I'm getting my little stretch node on the side. Now I can left click and drag. And let's say that I drag two to the left. You'll see that the entire system now has two less bays per row. Okay, so when I'm clicking into any of these bays while I am in group select mode, I'm getting this extra stretch node that's appearing on the right-hand side. Okay, doesn't matter which bay I click into, I'm getting this extra stretch node. If I grab that stretch node, I can adjust how many bays are actually in the entire system per row. Okay, now this is going to work for the other side as well. If I want to maybe create one less on that side, I can do something like that. Okay. Now, the other thing that we can do is we can control aisle widths. And for the aisle widths, you're going to need to adjust individually. Okay. We can use the stretch nodes to adjust how this is moving, similar to those walls. If I want to bring the top down, I'm going to grab that stretch node. And if I want to bring this aisle up, I'm going to use this stretch node. Okay. Notice that as I'm stretching, I can see the distance here on the left, and I also, in my quick properties, can see my row width. I'm also getting an option for aisle clearance. So if you have overhang, that clearance is going to be based on that overhang. So for right now, we don't have any overhang, so we've got the row width showing. So let's say that this row width, we need it to be 10 feet. We'll go ahead and give it 10 feet and let go. And now that row is set to 10 feet. Now you do want to work smart with these. So I would recommend starting at one end and then kind of going from there. If you try to stretch in the middle, you're going to be kind of fighting against yourself. Okay. You might end up with your whole system somewhere that you don't intend it to be, just depending on how you are working out these different aisle stretches. The easiest way is to set your aisle distance in the pre-configurator before you even place it. But you can make adjustments after the fact. Let's say that maybe you need just a little bit extra on one particular aisle. You can stretch for that particular aisle. And it will adjust the rest of the system for you. The rest of the aisle widths are going to stay at whatever that default was until you manually adjust them. Okay. But you can make adjustments if you need to for those particular instances. Okay, so let's say that maybe we don't need this final row. Maybe after we've adjusted our aisles, we've decided we are not going to be able to fit this last row. I'm going to go ahead and go back into my single select mode because I want to work with some individual rows. I'm going to select this last row and I'm going to press delete. Then I'm going to select this last aisle and press delete. There we go. And now I have one less row in my system. If I need to add additional rows, I'm going to actually need to add it as an additional system here. Okay. And this is how I will be adding that back in. Okay. So there's my default. I can go ahead and select from here and add that extra row back in if I need to. Okay. Um, it looks like I may need to do a clean start because it looks like as I'm trying to generate racking systems, it's no longer actually adding racking systems in for me. So I might want to, at this point, press save, do a clean start and restart. I think we are okay to continue on with what we are working on with just kind of manipulation from here. But you'll notice that I tried to add that in and it didn't actually add in. Same thing for that double deep that I tried to show as an example. It didn't add that in. Those are the types of unexpected behaviors that would be a really good indicator for a clean start. Okay, so let's talk about other ways that we can manipulate the system. So far we talked about kind of stretching the entire thing, either adding or removing the number of bays in a row. We can also remove whole sections here or whole rows quickly by just using that rectangle select and deleting them. And we can also add back in by using that insert rack system and then just starting wherever we want to add those in. Now, let's talk about other ways that we can manipulate the system. When you are in single select mode, you can select individual bays and you can control another thing here. You can control the number of levels by using your 3D view and selecting the stretch node on the top in the center. Looks like a cylinder that's standing upright. You can actually left click and drag that to adjust the number of levels in that particular bay. So this can be either more or less than maybe what you had before. And you'll notice that as you add that, as you make those adjustments, the frames are automatically adjusting with that change. Now, I've made an adjustment here. So notice that my bay numbers are different. So this was an A2 and now it's an A3. If I make further adjustments to other bays, every bay type will have its own bay number automatically. So now I've got an A3 and an A4. Okay. So we've got these different bay types now. All right. The other way that we can control this is in our single select mode. Let's go ahead and select a row here. So I'm selecting this back row. I am in my group select mode. So I've got this gold outline and I've selected this row. Notice that I have additional stretch nodes on the actual bay that I have selected. If I decide to change the size of a particular bay by using these stretch nodes, let's say that this is going to be a really small one. Maybe we're going to have lots of overlap. If I make that change, notice that it's going to change that width for all of the racking that is in that particular row. Okay, so now this back row has lots of overhang. Okay. All right. So I know this is kind of like a lot up front. How are you guys doing so far? Okay, if you move a row in an aisle, it detaches. How do you snap them back together? That's a great question. Once you detach them, they're really difficult to get back together. The best thing you can do is Control Z to undo it, if you're able. Um, if not, the way that's going to work the best for all of the other functions is to redraw the portion that needs to be moved back. So just delete the one that you had moved and then redraw a new portion. Um, and that will allow it to kind of connect back together. Otherwise, you're going to have separate systems. It is workable that way. You'll just need to work with them individually from that point. Okay, so we've gotten some of these things going. Now, the other way that we can work with these, which is pretty cool, is if you are in single select mode and you select a certain portion of your racking system, you are going to get those stretch nodes on the end. So let's say that I want it to be this one. I can select a bay in this row. And then with that stretch node, I can actually make that adjustment and my whole selection will change instead of just the entire system. So I'm going to go ahead and undo that one because I had that tall uh, bay at the end. Let's go ahead and do these two rows. Let's say that I want these two rows to be slightly smaller. Okay, so maybe we have some kind of, something right here that we need to make space for. We can really quickly and easily make that adjustment by using the single select mode. So instead of changing the number of bays per row for the entire system, by using single select mode and making that selection, we can actually stretch it out. So maybe let's say that all of these in the back can be all the way across, something like that, to really maximize your space. Yes, you can. Okay, so right now we're talking about kind of adjusting the overall system. And now let's get into kind of making some more kind of uh, fine tuning changes. So the question was, can you change the load type on a single level in one bay? And yes, we absolutely can. So we will get there in just a moment. Okay. Um, Let's talk about our spread tools real quick. So right now we've got some different bay types. Okay. And so let's say that we wanted this lower bay to be applied other places. We can go ahead and go down here to our spread tools and we're going to select the thing that we want to copy out and apply other places. So let's say that we want to grab our entire row. Maybe we want to grab this entire row, or we want to grab the frames. We want to pick up a bay, pick up the level, or pick up an individual unit load. For this example, let's go ahead and pick up the bay. Now we're going to select the bay that we want to grab. We can do this in either 2D or 3D. I find that a lot of times it's easier for me in 3D because I can quickly see and recognize the bay or the particular components that I want to actually copy. And from here, once I select that, now with that selected, I've got some different options in my quick properties. Do I want to apply this to a row, a column, or the entire system? So I can apply this to individuals. So let's say that I want this one individual to have those properties, or maybe I want this entire row to have those properties. Okay. It looks like my frame didn't come along with that one. We'll go ahead and undo that guy. We'll go ahead and spread it another way. But let's say that we want maybe the second row to be all lower. There we are. Okay, so it's going to take whatever properties of that particular bay and it's going to apply them to wherever we select. So same thing, maybe we have this higher bay and maybe we want to apply that out to this entire row, maybe to this row as well. Maybe our ceiling's a little bit higher here. We've got a little bit extra space. We can go ahead and apply that. Now, we can also do this for entire rows, like I said. So if we want this entire row to be spread, maybe we want this back row to mimic this front row. Notice that it's going to take the entire row and copy it. So even though I had more bays in the back, because I used my spread tools, I'm applying that entire row to that back row. So it's just going to copy out exactly what you have. Okay. Now, when you are working with your different levels, you can actually select your different levels within your Bay editor. So we're going to start to continue our customization here by using our Bay editor. Okay, so we're going to open up the Bay editor and we're going to see all of the different Bay types that we have listed here to the left. If we want to make adjustments to the existing bays, we can go ahead and adjust them right here. Or we can even use this add button and we can create more bays and we can apply those into our drawing. Okay, so Corey has a note here that spread tools will be enhanced a little bit in this next phase of development. So you saw there that there were a couple kind of things that were a little bit unexpected. Spread tools will be working a little bit better after the next phase of development. So that's fantastic. All right. So let's take a look at this. Let's say that these taller bays, maybe we wanted to make some adjustments to how this particular bay is set up. The first thing we can do is we can adjust the size. So if we want to adjust something here, maybe we decide, well, you know what, it's not actually 7 levels high, it's going to be 6, and maybe we don't want the load on the floor for this particular bay type. Then when we go to level, we can adjust what we are storing on those particular levels. So let's say that for our level 1, maybe we want to have our drums for our level 1. Okay, we can adjust that level unit load here within the Bay editor. We can also adjust accessories here as well. So maybe we wanted to have some type of accessory. We can apply these accessories here using these tools. So let's say that we wanted to do, let's go ahead and do, what's going to fit? We can go ahead and do some skid channels. Maybe we want to apply that here to this level. And you'll see now that I've got those skid channels applied. Okay, so after we've made adjustments to our bay editor, I've adjusted an existing bay, okay? And so I'm going to go ahead and apply to all of my existing. So now when I click this, you'll see that all of my existing bays of that type now have that setup, okay? And I can adjust this further. So, I mean, if I wanted to make adjustments to any of these other things, I can go through and really fine tune it. Maybe let's say that I wanted to adjust the width of my bay so that way I was able to fit 2 of these pallets down at the bottom, something like that. I can really dig in and really customize these different bays to suit my needs. Now, the other way, like I said, that you can work with this instead of adjusting an existing is we can actually copy. So if I make a copy of this, now I can create a copy and maybe let's say that our width is going to be, let's go 10. And let's see here, we are gonna not do that. Let's go ahead and remove a couple of these. So I'm just going to go ahead and remove a couple of the levels, make some more adjustments. Now with this copy created, I can actually apply it similar to that spread tool. So I can go ahead and click apply and then click wherever in my drawing I want this to actually be applied to. And so it's like using those spread tools, I can apply that out. Now, I probably want to do some work with my frame editor. I probably want to do a little bit of adjustment there for my frames to kind of have it be a little bit more true to life. But for right now, with this extra space, I want to show you how you can add a couple other things. So that was using the bay editor and creating those additional bays as well. So remember, we applied that bay change to all of those existing bays, and then we created a copy and applied those out. Now, one other thing that I didn't mention was that you can rename these. So if I make a copy, even if I don't make a copy, you can rename any of these. So whatever makes sense for you to keep track and keep organized, you can rename these. So you can quickly recall them so you know, oh, this is the bay type that has this particular type of unit load and be able to really quickly and easily use them. Okay, now we've got some extra space up here, so you can actually do some insertion. So if we wanted to insert a level, we would be able to insert a beam here. I'll go ahead and zoom in a little bit so you can see. So maybe we wanted to add an extra level here, maybe add an extra level here, doing some kind of further customization. If there are specific things that you need to do here, you can use these other tools. Now you can also insert unit loads. These these tools will only work for you if you have space to apply them or if you click this allow replace. Okay. So if I click allow replace, you'll see that whatever is covered in red will actually be deleted for me to add this extra thing in here. Okay. If you do not have that allow replace selected, it will only allow you to place it somewhere that you already have existing room. So the same is true for this unit load selection. It's only going to allow me to place it where I actually have room to place it. Let's go ahead and adjust this unit load. I'm going to go into my unit load editor and I'm going to grab this drum. I know that I did add these accessories, so let's go ahead and delete that skid channel. Again, I am in my unit load editor to do this, to do these really like kind of fine tune adjustments. And I'm going to make some space and we'll see if we can't get a second unit load in there. So let's say that we want to share with another palette down there, something like that. And I can choose from this drop down what I actually want to add into that space as well. So if you have the space to add it, you can add those unit loads in. Notice that it will not snap anywhere for me where there is not room for it to be. So for example, these ones here, it's empty, but there is not enough space for that actual unit load to go. Okay. So you just want to go ahead and set these up wherever you need them to be. So this is to answer that question of can you change the load type on one single level in one bay? So there's a couple different ways to do that there. So it's the bay editor, you can do it that way. Or if you want to do some fine tuning here in the 3D view, you can also do that here. You're going to want to use that unit load editor. And if you need to make space, so let's say that you wanted to adjust maybe this bottom level to be both drums, we can go ahead and delete both of these unit loads off of this one particular level. And then we'll go ahead and add in those drums to this level. Oh, is there not going to be enough space here? Let's go ahead and remove this level, make enough space. I just want this beam. Let's make some space here. I'm going to go into my normal and select this beam. I should be able to just remove this one beam. Let's go ahead and scoot this one up. There we go. A couple little kind of hiccups here, but that's okay. Let's go ahead and add those drums. Now we've got plenty of space to add those drums. So again, it's going to take in your clearances that were set up with your unit loads and your pre-configurator. So sometimes you do need to kind of keep those in mind if there's not going to be enough space for that particular thing. So let's go ahead and do some drums here. There we go. Now, if you have an existing level that you'd like to use, you can actually use the select level. So I'll go ahead and select this level. It looks like it's gotten a little bit confused here. It looks like it's all kind of tied in together here. We've got a little bit of a hiccup going on, but you can grab a level, an existing level. Let's go ahead and grab this one here, and then you can apply it other places in your drawing. And if you use that spread tool to apply, it will automatically adjust the spacing for you. So how I was saying I couldn't add those barrels in before because there wasn't quite enough room in between those beams. If I use that spread tool to spread that one level, I am able to spread it appropriately. It looks like it's grabbing. It looks like when I'm doing that, it's actually grabbing the whole thing. So that's Corey, maybe something for you to mention to to our team. Okay, so continuing on, let's say that maybe we want this entire bay to be all of these barrels. We can say, you know what, I want uh, this entire column all the way up our system to have these barrels, or maybe we just want this column level. So that's going to be all of that particular level all the way through the system. So if you can see that there. Um, or we can do just a single, or we can do it to the entire system. And that will automatically adjust the height of those beams. So you'll see that my total height here for this bay is a little bit higher while it fits it in. Okay. Yeah, I think I need to run a clean start, so I apologize. It's a little bit confused and I need to give it a little bit of a kick in the butt. Okay. All right. So, um let's see, a couple other things that we can do. There are some really cool tools here available. One that is awesome is this tunnel tool, and this is going to be in the universal accessories. So this will allow you to create a tunnel through your system. So let's say that maybe we want a tunnel through our system, maybe right about here. Okay. And that will allow us to create this tunnel to allow pass through. Now, when I am looking at this, when I am hovering, I have my spread column. So do I want it to be a single spread here? Do I want it to apply to a single row, which might be appropriate because maybe I don't want this back one to be gone? Or do I want it to be this entire column? To make things easy on us, I'm going to go ahead and apply this to the entire column. And then I can also adjust the height. Now, notice that in my 3D view, I have a red highlighted area. That is what will be deleted to allow for this height of a tunnel. Now, let's see what happens if I adjust the height to 13 feet. So even though my actual height of my tunnel hasn't adjusted too much, I am still going to need to remove an additional level to be able to accommodate that 13 feet. And so maybe let's say that we only needed 11 feet or maybe even 10 feet. You can see that what needs to be deleted is actually going to be highlighted for you. So you can really quickly see what's actually going to be removed to accommodate that tunnel height. So I'm going to go ahead and left click to place that tunnel. And after I do that, my tunnel will be created. Okay, so again, I really do need to do a clean start because this is behaving in kind of a bizarre way. Let's see if we can get it to go. There we go. Just a simple system will work for me here. So I apologize, guys. This is my computer's issue right now. I'm having some struggles with this. This is how it's intended to work here. Okay. So you can see a nice, beautiful tunnel happening. There we are. So again, I just use that tunnel tool. I decide where I want to place that tunnel, give it the specified height, and a left click, and my tunnel will be placed. All right. There are other accessories that you can add. So maybe you want to add some guarding to your system. We can add these island guards. Now, these also do have spread tools that are really cool. So let's say that we wanted to apply this to the entire column. Notice that now I just have to apply that once, and that guard will be applied to the entire column. Something like that. There we are. Okay, now that we've got some products in our drawing, I'm going to go back to my project tab here. And now let's look at elevation and elevation view. We are over halfway through, so let's go ahead and take a break here. And when we come back, then we'll come back to our elevation view and our validate drawing. And then we're going to take a look at our papers. So let's go ahead and do a 10-minute break today. We will circle back at 10 minutes after. I have not had you guys do your exercise yet today. Feel free as we are working to play with the systems and to add things in. Um, I'm thinking for the sake of time, I might not have you guys do specific exercises for this along with me, but please feel free to experiment along as we are going through the training. Also, you'll notice that Corey has added some information on the high detail graphics and the use standard dimensions. So there's some good information here about what these different toggles are going to do for you within your extension. Okay, so let's go ahead and meet back at 10 minutes after the hour, and we will continue on. All right. Okay, so I ran a clean start and I've got CET open again, so things should work a little bit more smoothly for me now. Unfortunately, when you do have kind of weird behaviors, if that has already kind of taken place, a clean start is not going to like fix things that have already happened, but it will help for things that happen in the future. Okay, so let's go ahead and keep checking out the Speedrack extension tab. So we're going to go into the project tab here, and now we're going to check out elevation. So for our elevation, what we can do is we can select either an individual bay by hovering near a bay, and I can choose which side of the bay I want this elevation to be of. Or if I hover near the center of a row, I can get the elevation of that entire row. And if I hover near the end of a row, I can get the end view as well. So let's say that I want to get a good view of maybe this tunnel bay. Okay, I can go ahead and left click to place that elevation. I can select as many elevations as I would like, and I can continue to place these wherever I need them to be able to see all of the different bay types quickly and easily. Now I can come into my elevation view. This button will open up my elevation views dialog, and I'm going to see the different elevations that I have selected. Now I am zoomed out here, so I can manipulate this view just like I would my 2D drawing view. So I'm going to use my mouse scroll wheel to move around by zooming and panning here. And here we are. There's the elevation view of that first elevation. Okay. And then when I click into E2, this is going to be on the side. There we are. And now these elevations are able to be annotated. So I can add a 3-click dimension here if I need. Maybe I want to see the top of that unit, and maybe I want to see the upright, and maybe I even want to call out the tunnel dimensions here, something like this. Whatever kind of dimensioning you want to add, you are able to add it into this space. Now remember, these dimensions are able to be adjusted using those stretch nodes. So if you're like me and misclicker, it is really easy to make those adjustments and make them appropriate to wherever you need them to be. Okay, there we go. We do have other tools available here as well. So we can zoom if you find yourself kind of lost in space, you can zoom. You can position things. So if you need to position something in a very particular manner, you can use that position tool. You have lines and group lines that you can use if you need those for extra annotation. You can add additional rectangles if maybe there's something that you want to call out. I'm going to skip this one for just a second. I'm also going to skip this one for just a second. We can add text boxes. So maybe we wanted to call out this is a tunnel, something like that. We can add labels as well. These are both the same tools that we were using from our tools component tab. We also have that leader with text tool available, and then we can choose to show or to hide the floor. Now, these two that I skipped over. This first one is the send to 2D view. If I click this send to 2D view, it's actually going to put this elevation in my 2D view. Now I can move this to anywhere that I need it to be. If for some reason I want to have this in my 2D view, I can use that send to 2D view to have it here in my 2D view as well. The other tool that we have is this snip to paper view. So if we want to create our own version of this elevation, we can to have it in our paper view. We can go ahead and just create a rectangle around what we want to have included in our paper view, and it will send it right there for us. Now we can rename our elevations if we like. So maybe if we wanted to name this the bay name or something like that to keep ourselves organized, we could do that. There are different ways that we can work with this depending on what you need. Now, Speedrack has done a lot of work with the papers, so we're going to look at that really quickly, but we're going to have some auto papers generated that are going to do most of this work for you. So I don't want to get too deep into that before showing you those papers. Okay, the next button that we have is this validate drawing. Now there are, this is going to take a look at all of the product that is in your drawing, and it's going to let you know if there is anything that maybe you need to take a look at. So you can see different colors for different warnings, different types of things. If you ever have a red error, that means that something is significantly wrong and needs to be looked at. If you are getting a warning, this is something that you do want to take a look at just to see if there is something going on. So here we go. So here's where that wacky tunnel went a little astray for my before I ran my clean start. But CET with this validate drawing is saying, hey, there's something here where there's supposed to be a tunnel. Okay, so it is absolutely doing its job and saying something went a little bit wrong here. Now I can see that there's one of three of these for this particular warning type. So if I click through these different warnings, it's going to highlight all of these offenders for me. Okay. The next thing is the selected unit load will require pallet supports. So here we go. This is letting me know that I will need specific supports. And same thing, I have, it looks like it's for all of my unit loads here. So it's just letting me know, hey, I'm missing something from my drawing. And then here we go. There's the encroachment again for that tunnel that didn't quite go through for me. Okay, but notice that this tunnel that did work properly, we've got no problems, no issues there, but it is taking into consideration all of my product in my drawing when I'm looking at this validate drawing tool. So really, really powerful tool here will really help you just to make sure that you don't have any errors in your drawing. It's not going to catch, you know, everything all of the time. It's not designed to be the you, but it absolutely will catch a lot of common errors and it will help you to eliminate those errors. Okay. But ultimately you are the person who is making sure that the computer's doing what it needs to do. Okay. So let's go ahead and take a look at our paper view now. So down here on the bottom right, we're going to click into paper view. And right now I've got that elevation view that I brought in from the elevation dialog window on my default paper here. But there are some other tools that are available here within the Speedrack Papers extension. So first of all, we've got our project information. So this is going to be the same as what we saw before. If we needed to make any edits here, we can change them here without having to go back into the other view to get back into this. So this is nice and convenient here. We can also get into our elevation views so we can double check to see any of those views if we need to. Now, we can create auto papers here in the Speedrack extension within Paper View. So we can choose what size we want them to be. I'll go ahead and let these be the architectural size. We can choose how we want these to be, what type of layout we want. We can choose specific layouts depending on what we select here. If we want to load these in, we can load in existing layouts and add them into our papers. If we click this little arrow to the right, it's going to insert the blank version of that. So you can see this is going to be a very large sized paper, but you'll see that we've got that title block ready to go for you. And as we are checking this out, we can see that we've got some things that are automatically brought in. So I can see a data field has been used for the drawn by. It's automatically pulling that information in for me. So for example, let's say that we wanted a smaller size, maybe an A4. We can go ahead and add that default. We'll bring that one in. And now here is that next sheet. Okay, so we can see the sizes here as we are bringing them in. Now, I'm going to go ahead and we'll make these the large size, and I'm going to go ahead and create auto paper. So instead of bringing in individual pages, I'm going to go ahead and click this Create Auto Papers. And what this is going to do for me is this is going to generate a sheet that gives me my entire space as a top down. This is maybe not the best example of this because I have a bunch of junk that is not pertinent to my particular drawing here. Let's say that this was what we were actually specifying. But what it's going to do is it's going to create this 2D top down for you. And then these additional sheets are going to give you every single bay type that you've got in your drawing. And you'll notice that these are already automatically noted with their dimensions. So here is that tunnel bay that we had already looked at in that elevation view. So that's what I was saying. I didn't want to get too deep into that because your auto papers are going to show all of these things anyway. Now, if I zoom in here, I can see the bay name and it's going to show me the bay view and it will also give me the side view of that particular bay. Now, if I change the bay names in the bay editor, if I edit it, that bay name will show here instead of that A8. I can make it be whatever I need it to be. So here's A9. Okay. Now, all of these are also able to be adjusted. So let's say that I wanted to adjust this particular view. This is just a 2D view clip. So if I double click into it, I can adjust what is showing here. Now, right now, I've got a set scale showing. So if I want to adjust this, I can set this to custom, or I can, oh, you know what? I did run a clean start, but it looks like CET is still having some issues. Here we go. So if I set it to custom and I set my resize to zoom, I will have stretch nodes on my box. So it would have been very large like that before. I should have just had those stretch nodes pop up for me, but it looks like it did not do that for me. But here we go. We're going to go ahead and resize this. So let's say that this is the area that I actually wanted to include. Once I get that resized using that zoom and that custom size, I'm going to click the X on the right to exit out of here. And now this is what will show on that first sheet. Okay, so you can adjust these if you need to. So this is really, really nice. We've got all of these automatic sheets that are created for us with all of those different bay types. That makes your life significantly easier as you are working through this. And especially if you've got a whole bunch of different bay types, you're able to really pin these down and really show them. Okay. Corey, there were updates to the paperspace customization. If there's anything that you'd like to call out as a recent customization, I would love to hear anything else that you would really like to pinpoint there with these updated customizations. And we can kind of, oh, okay.
Yeah,
I s
the only thing that we really changed between the first release and this most recent update was the ability for users to create their own title block templates, and then those would automatically populate in every new drawing.
Beautiful. So that would be here they would add it
Correct.
in, and then if they
Yep.
select from that ad, then that's what would be populated for them.
Yes.
Beautiful.
There was also some very minor like tweaks to dimensioning and how things populated, but nothing major outside of what I mentioned.
Excellent. All right. Okay. So there we go. Any questions about the Speedrack extension before we continue on? In your participant guide, when you are looking at the Bay Editor pages and the continued pages, there's a lot of really good information for you for as you kind of take a look back. Um, it can be a lot up front, so be sure to refer back to these and refer back to those help articles as well. There's lots of really good information here for you. I know that we are pretty tight on time for our classes. We're trying to cram a whole bunch of information here within this time, but do just check these out. Again, there were a couple updates on kind of where these were positioned. So now we've got accessory tools, but as far as functionality, we do have good information in here to kind of help you along the way as you are working with these different tools and how you can work with them. Um, There is an unloaded view mode, and I do want to show you that. So if you've placed your items into your drawing, you can check out that unloaded view mode. Your unit loads will still exist in CET. If you open up calculations, you will still be able to see how many components you've got. Everything will still be showing here for you, regardless of your view mode that you have selected. Remember, we wanted to be in our unit load view mode to be able to work with independent unit loads, but you can also check out this unloaded view if you want to be able to see all of those racking components without seeing the actual unit loads that are going to be placed on them. All right. Okay, like I said, for the sake of time, we're actually not going to be working on the actual exercises together for this portion. But like I said, feel free to play with it. If you have any questions along the way, feel free to reach out to me. I'm going to put my email here in the chat. So that way, as you are working with the extension, if you have any questions that come up, please feel free to message me with those questions. Okay, so next topic that we're going to talk about is reusable files. So I talked about this a little bit with a few of the things that we covered today, but the big takeaway here for you to remember is that a lot of things in CET can be saved to reuse for future use. So you can save yourself a lot of time instead of having to recreate things over and over and having to redo things. You have a lot of things that you can do as reusable files. Your reusable files are going to be within your CET documents, which remember it's going to be in your documents folder. You will have a CET documents folder that is automatically created when you install CET, and that is where all of your reusable files are going to live. So you have some different files that will automatically be created when you are working in CET. Your drawing file is going to be your .cm DRW file. That's your actual drawing file. While you have a drawing file open, you're going to see another file in that same folder that looks like this. It's a .cm lock file. That's a lock file. And that makes it so nobody else can open up the same drawing that you're in. So that is just a safety net for you, that if you ever happen to see a lock file in the folder once the drawing is closed, occasionally you might see that. You can go ahead and delete that, get rid of that if you need to. But while that drawing is open, it is expected that there's going to be a .cm lock file, a lock file, that will prevent anyone else from opening that file. And then if you have selected to create backup files, you may see that .cm bak file. That is a backup file of your drawing files. All right. So when you are working with your reusable files, organization is really important. You can rename things as what makes sense to you, but it is really good to be familiar with these things. So you've got your racking pre-configuration. So those are .cm configurator files. You can save as many pre-configurations as you would like. So instead of having to set all of those customizations up individually every time, if there's something that you use very, very frequently, or maybe even client specific, you can save those configurator files. You can also save things like schemes, wall settings, calculation view settings. You can save those title blocks, and you can also save favorites. So our last topic today is going to be favorites. So, again, we've talked a little bit about those reusable files. There are some really good things that we can do with that. Unit loads are the brand new one as of 16.5 that we can now save as a reusable file. So be sure to leverage those whenever you can save something as a reusable file. It's a good idea to do that just to save yourself that work. Okay, so our last topic today is going to be favorites. And for favorites, I'm going to go ahead and pop into CET. You can save pretty much anything as a favorite within CET. So it's anything that's going to be within a selection, you can save as a favorite. So I'm going to go back over to our stuff that we added earlier. to our palettes and things that we added earlier in class. And let's take a look at these. So let's say that I have a few things that I've kind of combined together. Maybe we've got something, let's put it on a palette. It's actually on the ground. There we go. Something like that. Um, I've got a few things together that I want to be able to use in future drawings to be able to just show quickly. And maybe this one that's already got boxes generated. All right. So maybe I've got a combination of things that I want to be able to show quickly together. I'm going to go ahead and select those things. So we'll go ahead and select those. And now I'm going to right click and I'm going to save this as a favorite. Okay. Go ahead and click save as a favorite. Now, it should automatically direct you to your CET Documents favorites folder. If it does not automatically take you there, if it takes you to somewhere else within your computer, navigate to your documents, then to your CET documents, and then to your favorites folder. Once you're there, you can go ahead and add a description if you would like and give it a file name. So we can say these are going to be palettes with boxes, something like this. We'll just go ahead and call it palettes. Maybe I wanted to give it a description to give it kind of more detail here. I can go ahead and click save. And now this group of items has now been saved as a favorite. Now, these are not snapped together. These are just things that I selected all at once. When I want to recall a favorite, all that I have to do is press F on my keyboard for favorite, navigate to my favorites folder. It should automatically take you there. Sometimes the first time that you do this, it might send you somewhere else, but just go ahead and navigate to your documents, then your CET documents, and then your favorites. And then you can go ahead and find whatever favorite you would like to bring in. Here's that palette's favorite that I just created. I can click open, and that will put that on my cursor, ready to be placed in my drawing. So let's say that you have a configuration of things that you really want to add frequently, or maybe you've got a warehouse shell that you want to be able to use. So let's say that you are going to be specifying some racking and maybe you don't know exactly what the space is, but you want to be able to show it with some kind of background, some kind of interesting, like kind of actual background. You can set up a shell and you can save all of your architecture as a favorite to recall. So I will show you a few of the things that I've got here that we can do. So let's say that we wanted to do, I'm not even sure what this is. Let's see what this one is. Warehouse. Here we go. I've got a big warehouse ready to go. So this is all that architecture already built, already ready for me. I can slam some product in there and get a really nice rendering, right? With some kind of generic warehouse background, without having to do really any extra work. And so all that you have to do is just select whatever you want to have included. So you would select any kind of architecture or anything that you wanted to include in that favorite, and then just do that save as favorite. I'll show you a couple other examples. I've got a few things that I think most of my stuff is going to be commercial interiors as far as favorites goes. But here's a mezzanine, something like this. Maybe we've got a mezzanine saved as a favorite, something like that. If there are things that you use frequently, this is when you're going to really utilize those favorites. Okay. Um, Again, this is all particular to you and your particular workflow and the types of clients that you have and the types of projects that you're working on. You can save pretty much anything as a favorite. This also includes racking systems. So let's say that you have a very particular system that you have created that you know you quote or specify very, very frequently. You could save that as a favorite and then bring it back in. Just know that any properties that have been applied to anything are going to stay the same in your favorite. So if you want to make changes after the fact, you're going to need to go back in and make those adjustments. So if you have, For example, this mezzanine favorite, the railing was changed to blue. And so I saved it while it was blue. Every time that I pull that favorite in, it's going to come in blue for me. I would have to readjust that color. I would have to apply a different color if I wanted to adjust it to something else after the fact. Really, really powerful tool. Again, it all depends on what you use really frequently. If you're someone who maybe is making um, staircases or, doing mezzanines, or you're doing these kind of extra things frequently, it is a really good idea to utilize favorites to help save yourself some time. Okay. All right. So that is where we ended up. I didn't talk a lot about calculations today, um, in, while talking about the Speedrack extension, but we do have a little bit of time left. So I do want to kind of expand on that a little bit. When we are working with our different products, as we bring things in, if we open up calculations, we will be able to see those different items within calculations. Now, you're always going to have your main article view, and your main article view is something that we're going to talk about tomorrow. We're going to get really in depth into our different article views, but this is going to be everything that exists in your drawing. We can work with this in a lot of different ways. And this is kind of the whole plan for tomorrow, is how we can work with these different things. But I do think it's important for you guys to know that you can see all of these different components, and you can actually expand them out by clicking on this little plus by the eye. You can see more information and the options that are applied to those different things. So if there's more information um, that is within this particular line item, you can click that little plus icon to be able to see a little bit more information about that particular line item. Again, we're going to get really deep into this tomorrow, and how to kind of manipulate these and work with them in different ways. But it is good to kind of get a little bit of a little preview on working with those calculations. All right. Well, I think we're going to go ahead and call it a day, unless anybody has any other questions about what we covered today. Or Corey, if there's anything else that you would like me to go over, if there's anything that you can think of that you would like to really highlight, I'm happy to do that. But otherwise, I can go ahead and give you your last 20 minutes back.
I don't think I have anything else right now. Oh, Steve has a question.
Sure. So you are going to be able to find the recordings in the Academy. So let me go ahead and show you this session one. That was yesterday's session, because that one is going to be all um, up to date now. Here we go. So here is session one from yesterday. If you just click on session one, instead of having a link to the class, it's going to say watch the replay. There is an access passcode here. So when you click watch the replay, it's going to open up a new window for you. Make sure that you copy this so that way you can paste it in. It's going to ask you for that passcode to watch it, but the passcode is directly underneath the replay. Yeah, no problem. And this is going to be the same for all of our classes. You will have access to these recordings. They do take about an hour and a half to 2 hours to get them uploaded and into the system. So it might not be immediately available, but it will be available by tomorrow morning at the latest. All right. Well, thank you so much for joining me today. And tomorrow we are going to dig into calculations
Oh,
and working with our
there was
quotes.
one more question from
Oh,
Bruce.
oh, Bruce, I missed you. I'm sorry. How to get to papers. Yeah, that's important. Okay, bottom right-hand side, next to your view toggles here, it says paper. That is how you can toggle into your paper view. And then when you need to go back into your drawing view, you're just going to select one of those other options. So this two views is going to take you back into your split view. All right.
And I will have one more question for you
You bet.
after some of these people leave for the day.
No
Just a
problem.
issue that one of our users is having.
Sure, no problem. All right, everyone. So I'm going to go ahead and stop the share and end our meeting for today. So thank you so much, and I will see y'all tomorrow.
I did also reach out to the devs for this question, but Craig is having the issue where his 3D space is still completely blank. And
Hmm.
I have tried everything under the sun that I can think of. Zoom to fit, zoom in, select a group, checking, unchecking the show floor and auto expand, new 3D view. We did a full clean start. We actually did a full uninstall and reinstall, and his 3D space is still just completely white.
The only other thing to double check is to make sure that you're actually running in hybrid mode and not just software mode.
I really know
Did you
that's
guys
in.
did you guys check that? So
I did
that's
not.
in
Control
the
panel and
yeah,
then graphics.
yep. So you just want to make sure that you're in hybrid mode. Sometimes, so if your computer is appropriate for it, so I'm going to make the assumption that you're working on a computer that theoretically should be able to run CET.
Yep.
Um, Sometimes if you're using a docking station, it will force CET to run in hardware or in software mode.
Yeah.
Certain docking stations don't play well with CET. That being said, I use a docking station and mine is fine. But sometimes it can cause some issues there and it will force it to run in software mode instead of hardware and that or hybrid and that will um not allow you to actually render anything in 3D. So if you're having an issue where you can't see anything in that 3D view, I would suspect that maybe it has something to do with that.
Okay. And it looks like Craig's still on here. So, Craig, if you go into uh, File, Control Panel, and then Graphics under Settings, just make sure that you're in hybrid mode, which is CPU plus GPU. Yep. And just let us know if that fixes it or if you still have an issue. That is all I have for you, Destiny. Thank you very much for your time today.
Yeah, no problem. Yeah, I apologize for the hiccups there.
Not your fault.
All right. Well, thank you. And yeah, I will see you tomorrow.
Sounds good. Have a good night.